to this seminar. I think it's a true pleasure to meet you all and definitely talk about my favorite topic, offshore wind. Maybe second favorite topic, because I think mountains and mountaineering is my top. But I'll not try to mix them too much today. I truly believe in sharing and discussing the issues and the opportunities and challenges with offshore wind. It's definitely something that we need to discuss together, and nothing so that can be solved by single entities or bodies as such. Today, I will try to focus on the past, the present, and the future. And listening to you all, I think future is probably the most interesting one. But we'll try to draw some lines back from what we experienced and what we see today as challenges and opportunities. I spent the last 15 years trying to in the renewable business, as well as trying to build a renewable business leg in Hydro, Statoil, and now Equinor, which has been not super easy. I will admit that, but also fantastically inspiring, interesting, and rewarding in a way, because so much has happened since we started. As I said, I spent the last 5 years now in the strategy side, and strategy is all about kind of trying to understand your context, trying to put up some beliefs that you really strongly believe in, and then put out a plan that can be executionable. A little bit like when you go into the mountains, into unknown terrain, as I usually kind of make this comparison. When you have made a plan, of course, you have a direction and you're set up for success. You definitely need to adjust and adapt as things are changing. So that's a little bit about strategy. And today's context, I think this is more evident than ever, that you need to kind of do your adjustments as you go, because the world is not static. And that's why I also said I learn from the past, live the present, and prepare for the future, which I think it's a good mantra for developing strategies in offshore wind. But no story without context. As we probably all know, it's clear that our world is not heading in the right direction. We can't continue on this journey as we speak. CO2 emissions is still rising, despite phenomenal growth on renewables energy the last 10 years. Coal remains still the largest fuel source of power production, with only renewables counting for approximately 10%, maybe a little bit more these days. So we have an enormous task ahead of us. Transportation, electricity, and heat markets accounts for half of these emissions, and is naturally a good place to focus in order to decarbonize. But then we need kind of more electricity, and it will be key to completely rewiring the energy system in order to make this happen. And we need to make the whole system low or no carbon, but we also need to be affordable and reliable, which is kind of the last energy crisis, and even the Ukraine Russia conflict has kind of put on in front of us the last days, which may be the challenge even more challenging. I think the dilemma between reliable, affordable, and sustainable now is super important in order to get it right. The good news is, as you all know, there are some very nice signs on the horizons. Renewables is cutting costs every day, even if you kind of maybe now see that things are slowing down a little bit. The levelized cost of energy is expected maybe not to fall as much as we have seen the last years. But at the same time, we see all governments around the world now starting up, kind of increasing their ambitions. But they're also doing something important, that they're trying to kind of look at the policies, to look at the permitting processes, and order to accelerate these developments. And we see that almost everywhere we go, that there's an eagerness to accelerate this. At the same time, when you accelerate something, you need to kind of look at the challenges, what you need to overcome, or else you kind of move yourself into a blind alley or terrain that you're not able to move because of you haven't fixed things, the whole equation, as I like to refer to it. And that brings me a little bit back to the past, because what I've learned is that it takes time, and you have to have patience in order to develop the renewables. It's a long-term commitment. It's a very kind of cost and risky thing to do. So we need to do it. And the frustrating thing is that we don't have much time. At the same time, we need to hurry. At the same time, it's complex and difficult. So how do we balance this? I made this slide, and Gunnar, we've spoken many times over this 10 years ago, and it seemed then that this should be super easy, kind of to implement floating wind, and then maybe take 10 years. Now it's almost 14 years later, more than 14 years later, and we're still not kind of at the market for floating wind. Actually, like to see it. The interesting part is that we also mapped those back in the days, the market that will be the most attractive from a floating wind perspective, and maybe offshore wind in general, and it remains the same. So the physical things remains the same, but the policies and markets and everything else is kind of moving at different speeds. So you need to kind of to balance this right in order to get momentum, and you need to get project investable, and you need policies to de-risk your investments, and you need kind of to take the discussions needed in order to implement that at the right pace. So what have we done since then? Of course, you need to develop the technology. I mean, without technology, you are not able to build. So you need to start early in order to develop the technology. You need to learn from project to project, and maybe that's one of the hardest things we experience these days. When things are going fast, you're not able to implement the learnings as you would like to. And of course, you need to be ahead of the game in order to identify the potential of what you can do, and truly convince both investors, but also governments and others, that this will kind of be good for the environment, but also be good for the energy system and so on. And maybe a little bit the challenge we have seen in Norway as well. It's taken time to kind of realize that offshore wind is part of the solution in Norway. And then it's always about cost, right? So you need to demonstrate that you are competitive. You can always say that you would like to have subsidies forever, or you need to be sponsored. But at the end, you need to kind of be competitive versus the alternatives. So you need to work with suppliers. You need to share information and discuss, and you need to demonstrate that you are able to bring the cost down and implement that at the right time. And then lastly, what I learned, it's a scaling game. I mean, renewables is not all about scale, but a lot about scale. So you need to kind of increase the scale of what you do, both unit sites, but also wind farm size, at least for offshore wind, in order to be successful. And that means you need to develop a supply chain that's able to support you. You need to industrialize and not only have one project at a time. And that's something that really kind of struck us as an oil and gas company earlier, that when you develop oil and gas platforms, you do one at a time. Offshore wind and renewables in general is a totally different game. And it's also a much more local game than we used to do. So you need to work locally, and you need to understand the market you are part of, or else you have no chance of succeeding. Oops, sorry. So looking a little bit at the market from above, I think as we see it, there's strong growth in offshore wind in many markets, but still it's not like it's hundreds of markets in offshore wind. So we say that US is maybe one of the strongest markets as we see. We are well positioned there, but it's also, and both from a fixed and floating perspective. But we see that floating in US will take probably a long time in order to succeed, because you need it's more expensive, but you also need a kind of local supply chain on the West Coast in order to succeed. And all these kind of things need to be worked. On the East Coast, it's a very strong development these days, and we will see hopefully an increasing demand and increasing development of offshore wind in the US. North Sea, also, which is the kind of dominating offshore wind market in the world, maybe, except for China, which is now kind of rocketing on the offshore wind scene. We see a lot of positive developments. And I think looking at the energy crisis and looking at the Ukraine-Russia conflict, I think now Europe even kind of will increase its importance in offshore wind, and we will see strong developments in general. And as Equinor, we are well positioned in around the North Sea, but we will also probably strengthen our developments and investments in this area. And Norway, as we can talk more about later and discuss, has from almost been a non-existent offshore wind market, is now very much on everyone's lips. Baltic Sea, also from a physical perspective and also energy demand perspective, a very interesting area. Good wind speeds, good connection points, partly existing supply chain, but also a strong demand for reliable and local energy. So we have big hopes for Baltic Sea, and we see also Sweden, Denmark, Poland, and even Germany is now kind of moving into this Baltic Sea area as one market. And then Asia. Asia is the kind of the last hub or growth area for Equinor at the moment, and there's strong developments in many markets. So this is more a kind of timing game when it's actually picking off. We have been in Japan for many years, still a bit slow, while South Korea now is picking up very strongly, and we see also in other markets around in Asia that they're starting now to kind of put in policies, regulatory systems, focus on supply chain and so on. So they're slowly coming into this offshore wind business, but it takes a little bit of time, and it's important that they kind of grow this at the right pace. And then South America, it's fantastic resources. But at the moment, it's not a very well regulated or developed offshore wind market for several reasons. They have alternatives, and the cost of renewables or power in many of these regions are so low that offshore wind is not really competitive in the coming years. But we'll see, maybe. So as hopefully also learned this through hard experience in offshore wind. Size matters. This is just an example of what I've been through from the first offshore wind project was Sheringham Shoal, approximately 3.6 megawatt wind turbines, to Dudgeon, which is 6 megawatt turbines, to Dogger Bank, which is 13 megawatts, and now we're even looking at bigger turbines for the next project. So, and the effect of bigger turbines on the business cases has been fantastic. And I was one of the people that didn't think that we will kind of exceed 12 megawatts, 30 megawatts wind turbines some years ago, and it was proven wrong. So what the technology can do and what the supply chain can do is fantastic. I have, however, a little bit of going forward. I'm a little bit not skeptic, but I'm worried about this the development of bigger turbines. People talking about almost up to 25 megawatt turbines these days, and that in a way is probably possible. We also need to develop an environment around it with respect to supply chain, installation vessels that are going to lift them. You need kind of foundations that's going to support them and so on. So we'll see. It's a ongoing development, but and I would love to discuss that in the chat afterwards. What do we really think that the bigger turbines come? Another aspect, we have seen that the wind farm size are increasing. I mean, from the start, Sheringham Shoal was the first project I was looking at. It was 318 megawatts. Now we're doing 3 Dogger Bank projects, which is 1.2 gigawatt each, which is 3 times in size, which is fantastic in a way, but it also adds complexity and risk. The kind of the size of the project in itself becomes more complex, which is also something you need to handle. But it also gives you the opportunity to think differently. So when we earlier thought about the wind farm as a bunch of wind turbines, now we look at it as a power plant, and we can use digitalization. We can use different type of ways of controlling these wind farms. That is much more interesting when they have the size of 1 gigawatt compared to 300 and 200 megawatts. So what we see is that the 3 Dogger Bank projects now is approximately 12% of Norwegian hydropower production. So we can see the size of these wind farms is becoming very interesting. So then what about the longer term future? As probably all of you have I noticed the total energy offering is now coming to the scene. The energy crisis in Europe with the high prices and the not ability to kind of to flatten the volatility, but also kind of store energy as we want, is going to be critical in order to succeed with renewables. How the market for kind of this complete energy offering is not there at the moment, and hopefully that market will develop as we also develop the technology to support it. But I think everyone agrees that there's a huge demand for a more total energy package that can mitigate the volatility on the price side. I also will say that local is the new global. When we earlier talked about global solutions, global supply chain, global technology development, it's so much more focused on what is needed locally. It goes with supply chain, it goes with regulations, it goes with partnering, and so on. So if you don't have a kind of local plan and a local partner and a local offering in a way to even people and society, you will not be able to succeed. So a lot goes now into to understand the local needs and the developments and price developments in energy in order to succeed on accelerating renewables. And then brings me also to the one size does not fit all. We, at least some years ago, argued that offshore wind is fantastic because you can just mass produce it and implement it. It's probably the truth with some modifications. What we have seen, especially on the global scale, if you can compare Japan, South Korea with US, with Europe and so on, you need to tailor-make some of these solutions to a certain extent. And then you meet some of the challenges on the supply chain that people don't invest if they don't see the size of a market that kind of justify in investment. So there's a little bit of a dilemma in this, that you need to kind of find local solutions. You need to adjust and adapt your solutions to the local physical and regulatory and energy system needs. And then you kind of reduce the opportunity to standardize and work efficiently in order to reduce the cost. So that's a dilemma we need to solve. And then finally, floating is the next wave, and it's been so for a while. I truly believe in floating wind as the new game changer, but we still need to kind of get the cost down, and we need to industrialize this as well. So far it's only demos, even if the demos are becoming bigger and bigger. So there's still a way to go, and I will talk a little bit about this later. And it all starts about understanding the energy system as such. And I think there's going a lot of good work now to see how we can integrate the different technologies together with the regulatory systems, the market conditions, the financing elements, in order to accelerate this acceleration. But at the same time, you also noted that there's other forces driving us not to integrate to a certain extent. So this is something we need to find a solution to, and there's also some kind of missing money into this integration part, which we can see in many markets. A lot of people talk about it, but it's not really money behind to support the development of this integration. That goes both with combining technologies, it goes with storage, and it goes with cross product conversion, like from power to liquids, and from liquids to storage, and so on. And as always, the government policy and regulations is key for all parties that's going to invest and in this. And without investments, nothing going to happen, right? So you need kind of a regulatory framework that's you can trust on, and that supports your plans and ambitions. So you need volume, and you need policy credibility. You need to kind of agree on the role of industry versus government, and that's almost like on a local term. And that means also in the infrastructure side. I think looking at Norway now, we have great uncertainty on who is doing what, especially on the infrastructure side. And that's, of course, a big risk when you start to develop projects. Also, the local content requirements needs to be clear. It's fair that the local content is required or expected, but it needs to be at least understandable and not changed over time. So if you invest in supply chain, or if you invest in local workforce and so on, you need to understand how this is developed as you go forward. And of course, there are things you can't do, non-negotiables, at least from our side, that we are not willing to invest in because it's not proper. And then lastly, the coexistence. That's also a framework that we need to work on in all parts of the world. That goes with the same in Norway, South Korea, Japan, US. It's a little different from market to market, but the coexistence, that you actually sit together, discuss the issues, find solutions, gather data, and do it pretty efficiently and in right time, and then kind of divide the responsibilities and the risk accordingly, and not change them overnight as such. That's super important. It takes 10 years to develop an offshore wind farm from the start to actually have a fully functional wind farm. So that means you need proper planning, and you need kind of a good way to do this. And we need probably more of this, but we need it quicker in a way. So this coordination, and do it in parallel, at the same time have the quality that's needed in order to make things investable, and not make conflicts bigger than they need to be. It's definitely something that's critical. I see time is running, so probably spent a lot of time already, more than I should. So I will skip this a little bit, but as you see, there's definitely a technology development need or trend as we go. We started some years ago on onshore. We moved into monopiles. We thought it was going into jackets some years ago. At least some of us thought that. I was one of them. That haven't happened so far, at least not to the big numbers. And now we see both the spar and the semi-subs are coming into play. So the good thing is that now we have a different type of sets of technologies we can start playing with, that more suitable for deployment in different parts of the world, the different part of environmental conditions, and so on. So, and the good news is obviously that there's more wind out in the sea, and it's more flexible the further from shore you come. So it's a good hope that the floating technology will ultimately be a great success also in offshore wind. And truly speaking, the biggest potential is definitely on the floating side. But we need to get the cost down, and we need to get the scale up. without scale and without the cost down, we will not succeed. There are indications, if you are successful, that on both technology, scaling, learning effects, and so on, that we will reach the 40 to 60 euros per megawatt hour. But that depends that we actually invest and build stuff. You can't do this on PowerPoint. Then we will sit here in 8 years' time as well, and not kind of improved much on solving the issue, so accelerating renewables. I think also it's important to have stepping stones and test and de-risk technology. We've done that with Hywind. We did that with the demo. We did that with Hywind Scotland, which was 5 turbines. And now we're doing it with Hywind Tampen, which is 11 turbines. We both scaled the size of the park, but we also scaled the unit size, as you probably know. And by that, we have shown that we can do significant cost reductions and so on. And implementing these in a smart way, like Hywind Tampen at Gullfaks C and Snorre, we're also able to reduce CO2, but also kind of make a business case that's interesting for the party. So extremely difficult to have difficult, but also important to have these stepping stones. And if you have not been already, this is Hywind Tampen being built at the west coast of Norway, and take the opportunity to go there and see it. It's a kind of true proof that this is locally built. It's a lot of workforce. There's a lot of competence. There's a lot of technology that's going into this project that will be fantastically suitable and applicable for developing floating wind as we go forward. It also kind of shows that you can bring together oil and gas technology together with renewable technology in a quite impressive way. Okay, I will try to land with the Norway Energy Hub. You probably heard this about it in the news and so on. And this project is all about trying to connecting the dots, which I talked about. It's kind of linking the energy system of Norway. It's not an Equinor plan. It's a kind of Norwegian plan and an industrial plan, in order to take the big, vast resources we have in the North Sea and make it available for Europe, which is now even more than ever needed in order to decarbonize the energy system, but also make energy affordable and reliable. And doing this in a smart way, but accelerating at the same time, we can achieve a lot of things at the same in parallel. We can develop offshore wind and make it big enough. We have said 10 gigawatts, could be more, could be less, but at least it needs to be scalable. We can combine it with hydrogen and cross-commodity products, and we can also implement CO2 capture and storage in the North Sea. So we can make this as a hub, supplying energy with the kind of reliable, stable energy, which is now very much needed. But it takes that we solve the equation, all part of the equation: the legal side, the regulatory side, the technology side, the financing side, and the market side, and so on, in order to make it happen. But if we do it, it is a fantastic opportunity for Norway as we go forward. And in a way, it's a kind of Colombian egg in order to solve some of the issues I pointed out in the beginning. So I think I will pause there, and hopefully we can have a good discussion about some of the dilemmas and challenges and maybe predictions I come in my part of the presentation.